I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am. So, what had happened was I was making Phoenix's lunch, and we're taking turns having a neck injury right now. I currently have it, but Mark has had it for weeks. So he was in the hot tub trying to experience some heat therapy and some weightlessness. And I was in the kitchen trying to make Phoenix's lunch because the 15-year-old will not eat lunch if someone doesn't make it for them. So, and they like mayonnaise on their sandwiches, and I have a really weird thing with mayonnaise. Maybe we both do now. And so we, everything, all our food's like hippy dippy food. And so we were out of mayo in the fridge. And so there was 2 jars of mayo in the pantry, but it's like olive oil mayo, and it looks a little green. I maybe didn't share this part. It was a little, there was a hue to it, but I was like, I don't remember if that's the olive oil hue or not. So I opened it up, and it smelled like vinegar, very vinegary.
I didn't realize this was not mayonnaise that was in the fridge. Also,
I mean, I bought it off of a shelf, so it's shelf stable.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but so I start to put it on the sandwich, and it's just the vibes are off. The vibes are off. But then I look at it, it doesn't expire for a month. But I don't know when I put it in the. I go through phases, where you're like, oh, we're out of mayonnaise. And your brain thinks that every time you go to the store. So you end up with a stockpile of something. Maybe that's just ADHD. So I'm like, well, I can't try it. I'll ask Mark if he'll try it. And I I was positive you were going to say no. So then I walk out to the hot tub with the jar of the mayonnaise and said, would you be willing to try this?
I have no context, by the way. I'm just out in the hot tub. So she brings it out and she actually asks me like it's something she's made. She says, like, will you be willing to try this? I'm trying to figure out if it's good. And so I was like, yeah, okay. I'm not afraid to try something that you're making, even if it's bad. Like, okay, no big deal. But I am in the hot tub and I'm already at like 98 degrees body temperature. More than that.
No, that's your natural. That's 104 degrees.
I'm like at 104.
But you needed your water bottle filled. And so you said, well, can you
I said, perfect timing. I need actually water. Can you came out right when I was about to text you. And so I was like, I'll try the mayonnaise. Just go get my water so I can wash it down if it's bad. Again, I'm thinking she has made this concoction. So then she comes back out. And while she's away, I'm trying to muster up the courage to go ahead and do this in the hot tub. Like maybe I should wait, but I'll do it. So then she comes back out, gives me a spoonful of this mayo that I courageously put in my mouth, and it is immediately actually not bad. It's actually kind of just, it's mayonnaise in your mouth in a hot tub, which isn't great, but it doesn't taste too bad. Then within 4 seconds, the sour rottenness kind of kicks in. It's just very pungent. And so I am trying to be sweet and be like, oh yeah, it's good. It's a little strong. Maybe. And
I didn't realize that you thought I made it.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to offer like some kind of advice that's not being too rude. So I'm like, ooh, it's a little.
You went, what is that?
Yeah, what is,
It's got tannins of white vinegar.
Then at this point, I start to put things together that this is not your recipe. This is a potential rotten thing of mayonnaise. Because I see then the label, and then you're kind of like, yeah, I didn't think it was good. I was thinking about throwing it away. I'm like, what the communicate this, please. And so now my mind is like, yeah, our cat is throwing up because of the thought of this mayonnaise. Even the cat can't handle. He never throws up. He just like hacks air. Okay, so then I'm putting together that I've just taken rotten mayonnaise into my belly. And you walk off like it's nothing. Like, yeah, I thought it was bad. Like, okay, see ya. And I'm just like, thanks. So she goes back in to finish her sandwich making. And now I'm at red alert. Like, what? Maybe I'll be fine. I've got a strong stomach. Like, it's probably going to be not a big issue, but I am heating up like a lot. And so just the thought in my head of this warm, potentially sour mayonnaise is curdling in my stomach. So I lay back and just try to relax and kind of not focus on it. And I'm laid back like pretty far. Like my head is like hanging outside, almost upside down because it feels good on my injury. And then I kind of, for maybe a minute or so, and then I come back up quick because I wanted to grab my phone. I had an idea, and immediately my belly is trying to eject everything from it. So I just like rush to the edge of the hot tub and projectile vomit about 5 feet out. It was so horrible, man. And I'm by myself. She has no clue this is happening, by the way. I'm just like, oh. And so I then end up puking like a lot. And then I lay back down. I actually felt really good after that.
I helped
the
you
rest
with
of the night
detox.
was a little off. So communication is key, everybody.
I was holding a jar filled to the... Yeah, my bad. To be honest, didn't think there was a chance in hell you would be willing to try it. And so I was a little...
Kind of almost being funny.
Taken aback. Yeah, I just thought you would maybe help me like... I thought you would immediately make fun of me for asking you to try mayonnaise, especially in a hot tub.
Well, now you know how much I love you. I will try anything
That's so
that you bring
sweet.
to me.
That
Well,
makes
maybe
so
not
much...
anymore. It's been tarnished. my trust.
It makes so much sense that you thought I made it the way that you were like, oh, it's
Yeah.
a little sharp there.
Maybe less lemon or salt. What vinegar? What is this?
Whew. Yeah, it's been quite a week. Did we talk about how hard it is to get your body through the portal in the last episode? I think we brought that up.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've mentioned it here and there.
Yeah.
So, it feels like everybody's kind of getting the challenge and the hurdles at different times for different things. And so I think it's interesting to look at it. I mean, for me personally, I've had this like shoulder thing that's been in and out of my life for the last 10 years. And I used to I would approach if I had an ailment like that, like, oh, did I get an injury? Like, what do I need to fix in my life? So I thought it was like posture or how I was sleeping. And some of those things helped, but honestly, it was a thing that like there was no answer to. I couldn't get relief via any doctor or nobody knew how to help it. Pain meds didn't work. Cannabis didn't work. Nothing like would relieve it. And so then, now in my like state of consciousness, I'm aware that there's a whole other element of reality that sometimes is causing physical ailments. And so how to hack it, how to connect the dots of like, what kind of message am I being given to deal with this pain? From a spiritual level, like what can I connect? How can I connect my ailment to something that is maybe going on consciously? But I still haven't figured it out because it happened 10 years ago for the first time, more than that. It was like 12 years ago. And then it happened again like a year ago after and I think part of that, I was just pushing myself so hard to finish all the music that I was trying to put together for that, like my first record, just pushing way too hard. And I thought that's probably why I got it, because just all the stuff with projectors, energy and stuff, you can get sick and body ailments very easily if you're not resting. And so I assumed that's what it was, and started to try to adjust that in my life. Finally, that pain went away, but now it's come back and there's no real connection to like why it came back. There's no injury. There's no nothing. I've been doing the same thing and now it's here. And it's on the different side of my body. Usually it's like anything that's happening on the left side of your body, you can connect that to some esoteric idea or spiritual idea. Now this is happening on the right side. So, okay, what does that mean? And I just think it's interesting. It's not fun to deal with the pain, but it's kind of a fun labyrinth to try to like figure out where it's coming from. And I think now being much more open to causes of it that are not just in the material physical world, like this is coming from somewhere else. And I think it's just a really good approach. It kind of widens the potential of, finding the connection to it, that it could just be literally like a conscious thing that you're still holding on to,
Yeah, like if you can that's what the aliens told me. Like everything that's happening in your physical body is happening in your energy body. And if you figure out what the energetic allegory is, then you can approach it that way. So with the left and right, that's interesting. It's like masculine and feminine. So the first two times you had the injury was after you finished the album with Foster the People, the first album. You were working way too hard. You just toured for like years, right?
This is second.
Oh yeah,
I guess it's in the middle of making the second record.
Yeah. But you had been like so busy. It was like the busiest time.
Oh, so busy. And that's when a lot of anxiety started to kick in, actually, going into the second record, because I had started to realize that this isn't going to make me happy. And like, what am I doing? So there's just a lot of general anxiety.
Yeah. Too much work. And then you got the same side after finishing Safe, your record, right? Yeah. And you were working crazy hard on that. And then now it's switched to the other side. I know one of them is masculine, one of them is feminine. So yeah, that'd be interesting if it's like working too hard does this, but then like maybe too much rest or too much whatever.
Yeah. It's almost like I keep thinking that it's like I'm on a timeline that there's something not right with it. And so it's trying to show me where that is. And I'm just having to figure that out. But like a more clear one to me was the Hashimoto's thing that I had that I don't know if I was really feeling too many symptoms from it. I guess I was like kind of tired, and there were some things but basically when I got the blood work, it was kind of a surprise. The doctor was like, there's nothing to worry about, but you have a little bit of a sign of Hashimoto's here that, and that ties to your, what's that thing called?
Your thyroid, so it's your throat chakra.
So it's the throat chakra. And so at the time when I got diagnosed with that, did some research on it and was figuring out, okay, maybe I'm short in iron or whatever. It's part of my diet. But what was really significant to me that stuck out like synchronistically was that it's tied to the throat chakra. And a part of my like human design and astrology, there's a lot centered around using my voice authentically.
Yeah.
Like I'm supposed to be doing that. And I've come out of like the first half of my life realizing I was a chronic people pleaser and was not very good at actually speaking my truth in the moment. And I had realized that, in a lot of my seeking and kind of conscious exploration that this, like I had definitely been masking my whole life and was bitching and complaining about not being seen, but realized like I was not being available to be seen in my authentic self. And so I knew that there was like, I needed to embody that more and like step into that aspect of my life to be just more confident about saying my truth and speaking. Like there's something for me there for my soul, my life. And I just was not doing that at all. And so when I got that diagnosis, I was like, oh, there's got to be something tied to that part of my life. Like it just felt very real. And so I took it a little more seriously. Like, why aren't you talking? Why are you not saying the things that are in your mind in the moment? And started to work on that and got better at it. And then I feel like a lot of the Hashimoto symptoms went away. I haven't got blood work in a while, but the last time I did get checked up, it hadn't progressed at all. And so I feel like that one is I got that nailed down. I think I've got that one under control. But yeah, with this shoulder thing, I'm still trying to figure it out. I haven't put a lot of effort into it. I'm actually just trying to survive the pain right now. But yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation around this thing that the getting the body through the portal, getting the body through this change is going to be quite a little labyrinth, I think, for each individual.
Well, also, I think so. Part of the purpose of people experiencing body stuff right now is that what the body is a construct in each age also. And so since the last age the body was something you like exploit to work, basically, you know what I mean? And the body in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is highly advanced technology. In order for us to have highly advanced technology, we all have to become proficient in understanding our own individual body. And so the homogenized perspective of the body has to go. People who have a slower metabolism or metabolic experience than people who have a high metabolic experience need to stop listening to those people. People who can not eat gluten cannot be listening to diet advice from people who can eat gluten. It's becoming very differentiated and it's becoming very DIY. And I think that as the Western medical system collapses at the same time that people are experiencing these body things, it also serves the purpose to understand how these systems within your body work, and for the purpose of us becoming more embodied. And I'm not someone who was in my body before I got very sick, and now I've been kind of forced to do that. But it's like with this thyroid thing, every time something new, weird happens to my body and I'm trying to figure it out, and I've been on this path for a very long time. I mean, I started having issues like being, allergic to perfumes in my mid-20s. Food sensitivities became obvious in my early 30s. My body has been becoming increasingly more sensitive, and every time it becomes more sensitive, I have to learn a new mechanism of the body. But in perimenopause, I'm just now learning about the thyroid because I have been having these issues for the last couple of years, getting worse and worse. And now I understand it was like my body was not synthesizing free T3 from T4. And so now I've been researching that for weeks, and I have, I think, a pretty good understanding of like what's happening. And I'm like, oh, okay, my diet didn't have any iodine in it. It didn't have any selenium. But other than that, I now understand what the numbers on the lab work mean. And so I now understand, okay, I just need a little bit of this. But so I was talking to my sister about it, one of my sisters about it, because she was also having thyroid issues. And I was like, well, what's your free T3? And she's like, I have no idea. And I was like, well, what is this? And she's like, I don't know. The doctor just told me that I need this pill. And I was like, what? And so then we hung out the other day, and I was like, wanted to geek out on the thyroid. And she has 2 small kids. So her brain's, you're not available for conversations when you have small kids anyway. But she was just kind of like bored with the whatever. It's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know, the doctor said. And I think that's the way we've been trained to look at our own bodies, as like, well, the doctor told me this. I don't need to understand how this mechanism works, right?
Just do it.
Where moving forward, I just don't know that we're going to have... I don't think the healthcare system is going to improve. I don't think that people are going to either have the convenience or the access, or you're not going to be able to trust the doctors or whatever. Like, we're going to keep getting pressurized into a DIY world. And I think that is greatly going to benefit us. We are going to biohack our way through becoming much healthier also, because part of the like keeping you in the dark with this thing happening with your body is actually crazy if you think about it. To just be like, here's this, you need this. Like, if a doctor ever says that to me, I'm like, why? What, and then give me all of the details so that I can go research it. So I think that like, I'm having this neck thing, and I think partially because you were having a neck thing. And then I was like, oh, I hate that feeling when your head feels like it's 750 pounds. I haven't had that in a long time. And then I slipped on ice and clinched up. And then it lasted for so long. Like, usually when I get something like that, it lasts about 5 days. And it just kept lasting. And then the PT came and helped a couple times. And then it was almost finally gone after almost 2 weeks. And then the PT came to help, and he was doing something, and I clinched again and started the cycle. So now I'm on day 3. And I realized that the Vyvanse, like, I started researching like what this mechanism is, because the PT was explaining it to me, and he was like, your muscles have gotten the impression that there's danger and instability. And so they are trying to create stability by being super tight. And so you have to figure out a way to go into like such a state of relaxation that your muscles start to trust that it's okay. And I thought, like, what an interesting allegory for the way that our defense mechanisms actually make things worse.
And it's like a good allegory to be present. Yeah. To try to relax into the moment.
Yeah. And I realized, like, since this injury happened, I've been working out because I'm trying to, create momentum. And I have been on Vyvanse, which is a stimulant, which is probably not helping my body go into rest and relaxation mode. And I've also just been like, going. And then I drove up to Philly for a few days and drove back down. And I've not rested any of the days that my body is in a clinched state of overprotection. And so yesterday I couldn't even like walk. It was so bad. And then I just spent a day in bed, which I haven't done in months. And it's so much better today. But it also gave me like a framework for this that I never had before. Because this happens to me a lot. I used to get the neck shit a lot. And now I'm like, oh, it's always stress. Oh, and also in the past, I can look at like, it was really severe when I was going through that kind of twin flame relationship shit. It was happening all the time because I was in this overprotective state.
Yeah.
And so when your muscles are trying to protect you, they become rigid and inflexible. And that rigidity and inflexibility makes everything harder. And I think about how so many people in the collective right now are watching things unfold that they are afraid of. And so they're becoming increasingly more rigid and inflexible and kind of resistance to what's happening. And it's free, you can get it on the free Patreon, but I did an episode called Power Hour where I talked about like power in the new thing is flexibility, pliability. It's the ability to adapt.
Go listen to that if you haven't listened to it. It's very good.
Thank you. You're my favorite person in the world, so like anything I've done. And we are used to, in the cross of planning, power being force. We think power is rigidity. It is inflexibility.
This reminds me of Bruce Lee, I think, had a saying, and it might come from some more old Taoist koan or something, but that it talks about this like in nature, like a willow tree is very flexible, and so when there's a big wind, it's not going to get knocked over because it moves with the wind. And then there are other trees like the oak that's like very strong and rigid, but when a wind comes through, it can easily knock it down because of the rigidity. And so to be able to have more flow in life and not get knocked over, is to be more open and not attached to things, be really flexible. And I just love that. It makes so much sense in nature. It's like, yeah, of course. It's like, if you're rigid, you're not going to survive some of the natural effects that are going to come. So it's a great metaphor.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's like when you think of a hyper masculine age, it really was like force, pushing, driving, striving. Like that's where the quote unquote strength comes from in that masculine energy. But when you think of like the strength of feminine energy, it's the ability to stretch. It's the ability to receive. It's the ability to like move in the void and the darkness and the chaos.
Yeah.
And be changed, And it's creative energy. And we're in this weird moment where we're shifting from something very masculine to something very feminine. And so we still have all this conditioning of masculine, which is like, I need a strong defense mechanism. We need to fight back. We need to refuse to listen to the other side. No, we need to stand for this, whatever. And it's like literally not how strength or power will be used moving forward.
It's not the like wisest use of power.
Right. And it's also just like, it's a very materialist way because force and strength is a kind of a materialist way of looking at power where, when I think of, and I don't know a ton about this, but when you think of like a more Eastern perspective, like let's say martial arts, right? Where it's using energy and force and resistance that's like energetic rather than like rigid.
Right.
And so now that my muscles are stuck in this rigid defense mode, it's hard to, sit up. It's hard to go on a walk. Everything is infinitely more difficult because I am stuck in this rigid defense state that my body is just convinced that it's protecting me because things are unstable, but it's actually making things much worse.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just such an allegory for where the collective is kind of leaning. A lot of the collective is leaning right now, which is I'm really afraid of what is unknown and potentially coming. And I'm stuck in this rigid fighting against what is from this perspective of like it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Which is creating this rigidity that is actually just making it more painful than to just go limp and go like fucking, all right.
There's a beauty too in the unknown, like knowing that kind of inside, like you're on the right path. It feels right. But at the same time, not knowing exactly how things are going to roll out, like all the details, exactly how it's going to happen. And so much of us, I think the conditioning is to know all the data you can, so you are sure how it's going to play out.
Right.
And a lot of us do that just like kind of automatically because it's a survival mechanism. Like be liked by the tribe, be right, be correct all the time. But not having the ability to be open and like be secure in the knowing that you're on the right path, and know that whatever occurs in the moment, you will know what to do and how to respond. And just being able to trust that you don't know exactly what's going to occur. It's a little bit chaotic out there, but I feel internally I'm on the right path and I don't need to know all the details. And I think that is, there's a magical place of like being right in that middle of knowing that you don't quite know. And I've said that a million times on here, but that it's such a magical place because you're still and solid in your knowing, like there's a confidence. But then there's a really great opening, like an openness to how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And being able, when you're in that openness, you can get information, like you get communication from the cosmos, from your higher self, from that magical part of reality that knows how to get you through it, you know? And if you just trust that, there is no reason to be clenching through the chaos. It's just kind of a trust that it's going to work. I think it's a really powerful place to be in and there's a lot of power in that. It's like, I'm secure, I'm confident, but I'm not clenching and grabbing everything and forcing my narrative into fruition. It's just, I'm floating along with it. I'm not going to be manipulated out of it, but I am still and open to what's going to occur. I think that is more of a feminine state too, you know, being able to receive whatever comes to you in the reality and know that you will respond correctly.
Yeah. I always think that like giving birth is such a good, if you've experienced this.
Yeah. Birth is really tough for me.
There was a point I had an epidural with the first one, but there was a point where you hit this wall, in natural birth at least, where I would start to go like, I would go into denial of the reality that I was in. And I would have this sensation that if I had decided I could no longer do this, that it was going to somehow stop it. And with Lilith specifically, I remember sitting in the bathroom and going like, I cannot do this. I cannot progress any further. I want this to stop. And then having this kind of mental battle within myself that was like, oh, I don't have a choice. And then being like, why did I do this? What the fuck was I thinking? Like, I'm going to die. And then realizing there is no other option but through. Like, you have to just allow. And then the moment that I make that kind of decision, that it's like, I have no choice but to allow this process to take place. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like going from this very tight, contracted space to just open. And now when I think back to it, it's like, oh yeah, I was like actually holding.
You're resisting the thing.
I was resisting the reality of what was happening. And then even now when I'm telling the story, it's like I'm clenching my body. I'm actually not allowing the baby to come through. And then the moment that I just accepted the fact that I had no fucking choice but to allow this process to take place, like she was out in a minute, you know? And you see this everywhere. You see obviously the political landscape, a lot of people are in deep contraction about, and that's understandable. And then also your resistance, your internal resistance to that does not change it. It just makes it hurt worse.
Yeah.
And then you have like AI. There's so many people running around being like, you know, this is a mistake. This is a mistake. And it's like, okay, but it's happening. And so it's interesting when you try to explain this, what people hear is like, you're telling me my feelings aren't valid. And it's like, feelings are fine. They can quickly turn into stories though. So feelings like, I am feeling afraid. Period. End of sentence. I am feeling anxious. I am, it's a curious thing, the process of feelings, but then there are stories where this is bad. This is going to turn into Terminator, or this is going to turn into 1930s Germany or whatever. That is time travel that is future predicting, and that's a story. It's literally a story. We can have what's happening right now factually, and or whatever your perception of the facts are, and the feelings that you are feeling in your body, and that's it. But we also knew there was a collapse coming, and that's the thing that's interesting. It's like we knew there was a collapse coming, and the collapse is upon us, and we're like, oh, wait, do you mean we're just not going to get handed the keys one day to a new world? It's like, no, the old world's going to die, and it's going to be wild, and it's probably going to be wild until probably about 9 years from now. And that is scary, and it's a lot of unknown, and it'll probably be unknown for the rest of our lives because that's like a construct of the cross of planning or the cross of the sleeping phoenix. But we'll get better at living with the unknown. And so what's dying right now is our sense of authority outside of us, our sense of safety outside of us, our sense of consensus reality is dying. That's why nobody believes the same. No two people believe the same thing now. It's just a lot. We're going through something energetically and soul-wise is a lot. And then people look at something like what's happening with the government, which I think is very transient, and what's happening with AI, which I think is more permanent. And that's just my 2 cents. It could change tomorrow. I can't do future predicting because it is so wild. But everyone's going, no, this is bad, this is bad, this is wrong, this is wrong. And it's like, because at the same time, you're feeling the absolute death of everything you've ever known what it meant to be a human. And it's... the resistance does not change it. This is putting, even talking about this is putting so much resistance in my body. My neck is starting to spasm. Our resistance doesn't change it. It just makes it more painful, And I think that in the cross of planning, resistance had more of an impact. You could change things with force, but we're learning that you can't. And so a lot of people's force now is just shadow boxing. You're just swinging at air. And
there's so much that I think is inherently unpredictable right now because of the quickness in which technology is advancing into an arena that we just haven't been before. How that's going to affect jobs and people, culture, I don't think we really know. And we've been conditioned to be able to kind of know, be able to predict what the outcome's going to be with a certain tech or something, there's just, I think that's what made us comfortable about certain developments is we don't really understand where it's going, but we can tell, in the next year, this is what's going to occur. This is going to be the response. And so there's a comfort in knowing generally what effect a certain tech is going to have on culture. And I think we're at that point now where there's certain things are coming through that are almost hard to catch in the beginning of how influential it's going to be because we're just moving so quickly into this new paradigm. And so again, I think we are having to adjust to a reality that's more about being comfortable with the unknown and learning how to operate with that, which is beautiful on the level of kind of co-creative energy, the idea of being able to collaborate with source energy or your higher self or something. And that does, as I talk about all the time with the muse and art, it takes a lot of getting out of your own way and being very open. And I just think that that's going to be, it's a transition. It's going to be an uncomfortable change, but I think when we adjust to it, there's going to be so much beautiful innovation for culture, and that paradigm shift of everyone's going to start, falling into a paradigm where there's so much potential and creative opportunity because of how many things the technology has opened the doors to. But I think when we're in the transition, in the clenching, we're actually resisting that utopia coming through because there's an unknown to it. And the unknown is also wrapped up in a lot of cultural programming through movies and stuff. And so we all feel like we can see the writing on the wall, we can predict this is going to be Terminator. But that is based off of conditioning, and it's based off of thinking that we know exactly how this, AI tech is going to affect us or not. And I don't think we fully know that yet.
Right.
There's inclinations towards it and there's ideas, but I think this is one of the bigger tests is like being able to, can we get through this chaos and learn how to just float in it and accept this is what's happening and not try to clench and go reverse or prevent something from happening when we don't even understand what it potentially is going to be,
And even if you do know, because I see a lot of that, like how many times do you hear you're going to be on the wrong side of history, or it is very like collectivist, consensus-based relation to all of the changes that are here. And, we're slowly going to learn that you literally just have yourself and maybe the small group that you have around you. But even then, we will continue to experience people close to us kind of diverging into perspectives that don't match our own. And so long as we're only capable of having relationships with people whose perspectives perfectly match ours, we'll end up very alone. But I remember when 9/11 happened, and it just seemed very clear to me that, it was either an inside job or it was very opportunistically used as an excuse to go do like whatever they wanted in Iraq. And no one else that I had any contact with, and society at large, was not open to that perspective for a very long time. And when they were talking about weapons of mass destruction, Bush would like smile after every time he said it. And it was one of these things where I was like, can you not fucking see that person's like, I was the only person that had discernment. And if you try to talk about it, everybody was in mass hypnosis. And so they would, they were being continuously hypnotized with the word terrorist. And so it's almost like it's like a trigger word that would put someone back in there. And so if you try to talk about it, they would tell you to get the fuck out of the country, or you don't give a fuck about, whatever. Normal, rational people were in this hypnosis for years. And then the Patriot Act came, which I was calling the whole time. It was like, this whole thing is a trick to get us to give up our freedom. And then everything that now to get to a fucking airport and everything else. And they're spying on Americans. And then when what's-his-name came out, Snowden came out and said, they've been spying on you. I once again was still like, yeah, I'm trying to tell you guys, like, you're not free. This is not a democracy. None of this is right. Nobody will fucking listen. And now we're 20 years later, and all of that is obvious. And I have received zero rewards for being right. And it doesn't matter at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, people, the masses will fall for things so long as they are disempowered. And we will never be able to control what the masses do. And also, because the masses are looking for someone outside of them to tell them what to do, because they're not curious about how to take agency over themselves, being in resistance to what the masses are falling for is a huge waste of time. I've learned over and over and over again. And so when we're in resistance, even if it is AI is going to take us to a Terminator reality, it's already here, and the masses are already engaging with it. Now, I would say the masses are more in resistance to it than engaging with it, and I tend to steer away from whatever the masses are doing because it's usually not it's usually not the right path. But I think that when people, sometimes when we're like in resistance to things, there are things that happen in the collective that I don't agree with and that I'm not going to participate in. But I don't bother trying to get the masses to understand it. And I don't bother trying to like stop the freight train, I guess, because it's just like, I'm just going to stay off the train and off the tracks.
I think a lot of that has to do with the cultures. Like, we're trying to get to, people start to wake up and they're like, okay, I see all the problems and we need to get to utopia. So I see all the problems. Why don't you guys see the problems? Right. Fix what you're doing and then we'll all get to utopia. And so your getting to utopia relies on everybody else needing to change. You know? And we all feel that in the first kind of part of awakening. It's like, oh, I see it. If we all adjust to this way of thinking, we'll get there, And I don't think that's not how it's going to work. I think that's still a cross of planning ideas, homogenization, like get everybody on the same page. Consensus, yeah. But when you can realize that's not how we're going to get to a utopia, it's it's much more like individual and autonomous driven. And when everyone is operating that way, we live in a far more harmonic reality that you could call some kind of upgraded utopia. But it's kind of individually based, like it's together, but it's also like individual in your power, and you don't have to homogenize to anything,
Right.
I think that's, again, as part of this transition, it's like it's really clunky and uncomfortable how everybody has to adjust. And that's a big one too, is like this idea that we all have to resist everything until we're all on the same page. And like, you're just going to be sitting around a long time to get that to work. I think that's a huge part of it as well.
I think what we are calling utopia is also, it's also funny. Like if you took every person and had them explain what utopia is, you realize that, oh, these are all completely different realities.
Yeah.
And so the idea of utopia would be that human consciousness finds a way to live and let live, really, like create your thing and don't disrupt what other people are doing, and learn how to not cross into the aura of other people or interfere with other people's realities.
Yeah, and that's what I think is really interesting, the idea of utopia. It's so different for everybody, and I would say most people in their head is like a utopic reality involves no pain and struggle.
Right.
No resistance. And I would like that too. That sounds great when you're living in a reality that's full on about pain and resistance. But then I tune into the side of me that is that infinite consciousness that has been exploring, the cosmos for millions of years, that has an infinite ability to it. There's that side of me when I check into that. It's like, that's not the point of these realities, these physical realities. It's there to have resistance, to have tension. It's to, at least in this reality, it's like based on duality. So that's always going to kind of be there. It does not have to be painful and horrible. But I think utopia in my head is just a more harmonic experience where things, it's like an update from the version that we have. And so all of that is really exciting. And it does liberate the idea that we are, powerless in reality, and that we're always have to, bend to control. That's not going to maybe be there anymore, and it'll be much more driven by like your individual autonomy and what you choose to do. But there's still going to be resistance, and there's still going to be tension, because that's what drives creation. It drives like doing something different. It's change and everything. And so I don't think I think it's just an interesting thing to talk about and think about for yourself, is like, we always talk about utopia. We always talk about trying to get there. But what is that? And does it actually involve no pain? Is it just like all fairy dairy? Like I don't know if I would want that reality, to be honest. Like, yes, from the painful part of me that's struggling and can't get things to work, that sounds great. But then that macro part of me is like, that would get boring really quickly, I think. If everybody was just so happy and perfect all the time, it's kind of stagnation. And as far as like creative output and evolving to change the current situation you're in, you want it better. So there needs to be some distortion. There needs to be some kind of tension that sparks you to move forward, And so when everything's just perfect, like we all get stagnant. And maybe we do go through times like when you come from a reality that is very much controlled and about pain and struggle, and it opens up into you have new tech and innovations that, slow down aging, slow down pain, can solve cancers. That feels like utopia because the contrast is so different. Right.
The progress.
But it does not involve just like everything is fucking perfect and there's no distorted thing, because I think we're not going to be in a physical reality anymore when that happens.
Well, and weirdly, a lot of people think that how much people equate utopia with compliance. Mm-hmm. How many people are obsessed with like managing what other people do? How much hall monitor energy behind people that also say they want to create a more like equitable or fair reality. but they're still very heavy on forced compliance or public shaming or whatever. It's like, you are very much embodying the energy that you claim to be against. You still have a lot of that.
You get off on controlling people.
Yeah. And that's because it's a deep shadow.
STS, it's that whole service to self program we all have. And
it just has different like masks it wears. It has different moral compasses. But like at the core, at least here in the United States, the core shadow that is driving everything that sucks is that most individuals believe that they know what capital T truth and the right thing is for everyone. And they, if given the power and the ability, would enforce their worldview on people who do not resonate with it. I mean, at the core, that is the thing that keeps us from having something that is flowing, is that we have been conditioned into the belief of homogenization and systemization and
right and wrong. It's like there's like a right and wrong way. And so macro, we need to get everybody on the right and correct way.
Yeah, everything is this or that. Yeah. And so then we are like, it's like our medical system, all of it shit's based on men's bodies, where the female body is something completely different. And so all of this advice that people with female bodies have had to like try to navigate, and they're just now in 2025 being like, oh, you guys have a completely different cycle than men do. Like all of this stuff is standardized to men's bodies where it's completely different. And now we're like, neurodivergent people literally move through the world in a different way than neurotypical people do. But we have been forced into this one way of doing things. Like everyone is different. And so you can't have something standardized, including your moral compass cannot be standardized to the entire very diverse group of hundreds of millions of people.
Part of this seems to, in my head, it's like starting to bump up against this kind of existential philosophical idea that I've heard a lot of intellects talk about, that I think it's quite a conundrum, and I've experienced it at times. But this search for meaning in life seems to be like a real motivation for I guess for all of us, but like especially when you're coming into it like a spiritual awakening or like adjusting and widening your perspective on things, that there oftentimes does come to a place where you're like, you lack meaning in something, because you can kind of see through shadows, see through certain desires that you had that you thought were in alignment, but now they're not. And so you kind of give up on that. Like for me, definitely, like when I achieved success in my band and like got to the quote unquote top of the mountain for me, the satisfaction and validation was overwhelming and immediately. But then very quickly what followed was, I'm still not like satiated. I'm still not super satisfied, like in my soul for some reason. Like I've achieved this and I checked off like a thing that is part of like the dreams I've had in my life. But my internal state is like still not satiated. And what does that fucking mean? Like, why am I still doing this? Like, it was all about getting to the end, to the top of the mountain, and then it didn't feel right. So it's really fucked with the meaning of what I was doing. Like, why am I doing this then? And it was like a floaty feeling for a while of like, well, what the fuck is the point of being alive if you're not happy once you get the money and the thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what creates a lot of this, like, we're in an existential crisis, because if you just gave everybody UBI right now, universal basic income, and allowed people to just do what they wanted, we would have a crisis of people not having any meaning. Like you do wrap up in like, you may not like your job and you go every day, but you're doing it because it is providing meaning to your life to be able to support your family and then be able to go on vacation. You know, it's all wrapped up in meaning. And so if you just threw a bunch of people into a utopia where there was no real like goal set, it's just about like, experience what you want, go do life. I think a lot of people are going to not feel like they have any meaning, you know?
I feel like the generation right now, because capitalism has deteriorated to the point where people can't survive. So I feel like the UBI would, for one generation, create meaning. Like people would be able to experience rest and relaxation and whatever. But the next generation would feel a lack of meaning because they wouldn't know the contrast between not being able to survive.
Yeah. It's just, I think what I'm trying to get to is that there's like, we're so used to doing things in the day to provide meaning to why we're here. And a lot of that, sometimes that stuff is not really wrapped up in giving meaning to our soul, our like internal part. It's giving meaning to the transient ego that has to do the job to go get the fucking food or whatever, you know? And like, so it's always wrapped up in like giving us false ideas that motivate us to have meaning in our life. And so when you just strip all of those away, it starts, it's hard to live day to day just for the sake of experiencing and just kind of having moments of realization. Like that's kind of all it is. And I think for me, it was just a lot to adjust to. Like there is no meaning necessarily. It's like you're going to provide the meaning.
Right.
And when you don't have any containers, like you see through all of them, like there is no purpose to do this job if I don't like it. Why am I used to derive meaning from that because it's like all I knew. Once you widen your perspective, it's difficult to provide the meaning, like because it's always been provided for us.
Right.
Now we have to look at our lives and decide why do I still want to live? What is the purpose of being here? And create that yourself. But I think a lot of people have just always it's been given and it's kind of conditioned in. That's going to be like some weird adjusting too. I think you're right though. Like a generation that on the tail end of this reality that gets UBI, it's going to be very liberating and really great.
I think it also depends on your like state of consciousness. Cause I feel like if you're conscious and a creative and not built for the survival version of reality, I think that having your financial needs met, you are, of course, going to realize happiness isn't in money, but that's just something you don't realize when you're in survival mode. And you just don't get that the rich people are not without problems just because they have money. Their problems are just like that energy is focused somewhere else. You know, it's the same, like you get a great relationship and then it's your health or whatever. Like as long as there is your soul has a desire to be in some sort of tension, you're going to have tension. But I think that, yeah, because I do think we are headed towards some sort of, like, I think we're headed towards the end of you have to work to survive.
100%. AI is tearing that down.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of people are going to not, like, know what to do with all the time, you know?
Right. And so there's a lot of people, like boomers specifically, they start to deteriorate when they retire because their sense of purpose was, like, I work. Yeah. And that is very cross of planning. And so Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is I express, you know, I learn and I express. And I find a lot of, I think my dream life always was to just learn and grow and process and express. It's very much I have always considered like, the video game of life are the experiences that I'm having, and the cross of planning energy and the conditioning was always like, what do I have to show for it?
Where's my legacy?
What is quantified? You know, what is my career? What is my family? Whatever. What do other people perceive as my accomplishments?
And that's where a lot of people derive their meaning.
Exactly. And so those are the people that, yeah, if you took away the game of capitalism, there are a lot of people that would, yeah, I think that are very like naturally externally focused that would be like, does it matter if other people are not perceiving it, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird. For me, like I've dealt with that in the last 4 or 5 years. Like I'm not like when I'm doing music, for instance, I used to do it for the band, for touring, for money, for notoriety, all of those things. Now I'm doing music because I already experienced those things. I don't really want that anymore. Why are you doing music? It's like, look, I don't want to tour. I don't need to sell the records. Why are you doing this? And it's like, I guess it is pretty simple. I just want to share my individual thing. And I've started to understand more and more just how special like individuals are. Like there's anybody can paint a picture, but like I'm going to paint it differently. And it's not really about it being better or worse. It's just like, I know I'm going to add something a little different that makes it really one of a kind. And I think that's in everything I do. It's not just like art. It's like I'm going to get in the car and go get groceries and come back in my own unique way. And I'm excited to experience that one of a kind uniqueness. And I'm going to look for every opportunity of how I can make it my own.
Right.
And that's like, for me, that has become kind of the simplified like meaning to live every day, is like finally understanding the uniqueness of each individual, and having spent so much of my life not fully embodying that and kind of people pleasing to be something else. There's so much meaning in that to me now, but I had to like really grow into that, and it was floaty for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of the constructs of the cross of planning, you've got like continuity, and we all have this deep programming of sticking to things. And then you've got skills and fine details. And we all have this programming of like, I do so many sessions with people who are feeling this exact meandering, because reality becomes very meandering in the cross of sleeping phoenix. And so people are like, should I go get a degree? Like, so just like, I'm not doing anything, so should I go get a degree? And sometimes it's for financial reasons, like the idea that this will, because this financially is a shitty time. It's a shitty time for a lot of people. But the sense of purpose, I think is what you were saying. Like the sense of purpose is still so informed by the cross of planning, even if you mentally don't think that anymore. Yeah. And so the continuity, like picking a thing and sticking to it, is literally a construct that we aren't going to have. The developing deep skills in order to be, valid in the external reality, the having something to show, the productivity. I mean, I feel like I am still working through productivity programming of like feeling like worthless if I haven't been productive, if I don't have anything to show for that day.
Yeah, I deal with the same thing.
And I've definitely deconditioned a lot of the, did it happen if other people don't know it happened? I had way more of that than I care to admit. That in the last few years, I've learned to live life in a way that isn't documented, in a way that isn't like, for me to even have an experience, I felt like I needed to tell people the story. Like I remember when I was young and doing meth and was having all these crazy experiences, talking about how important it was to have all these experiences so that I could tell, people could know about them. And it's like, well, cool. Now I don't remember what happened Thursday. So there goes that. And the constructs of the cross of sleeping phoenix are literally the present moment. And so that linearity, we're going from a continuity construct to a present moment construct. And that's why our memories are all shit now. And everything feels like you're a completely different person one week to the next. It's because we're living in this totally different way of being. And then it's just really about intuition and your power and truly knowing yourself and truly knowing others. But so much of that is like internal. Mm-hmm. And so we've talked about this before, but it's like the mundane moments or the painful moments or the moments of difficulty or sickness or struggle. They really become about the moment and about like being present and experiencing your own power in that.
Yeah.
And it just is so different than trying, pushing, driving, striving, and seeking a goal that's like in the future.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like so many people derived meaning from in the cross of planning was some future goal.
There's so much energy wasted on that too, like projecting out, well, this is going to happen. Now it looks like this might happen. I don't want that to happen. Let me prevent and work on this to get it to not happen. So much of like just spooling around energy that like you're wasting kind of time instead of just like letting go and being like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to figure it out. You know?
Yeah. I mean, fuck, that really wasn't the name of that game though. I got to be honest. Like the cross of planning, you know, I always had this cross of sleeping phoenix in me, but the cross of planning, I was very conditioned by that. And what I kept finding over and over and over again is that the planning or the working towards or the happiness is over there, the hope and fantasy that something fulfilling was over there was always infinitely more satisfying than actually getting there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As planning the vacation was always more fun than doing the vacation. Working towards the goal was always more.
Working on a record is so much more fun than like finishing it and putting it out. Honestly, for me, it is.
Yeah, it's like the sense of purpose was really in the
experience, kind of
in the trying, you know, in the fantasy of it. The thing was always underwhelming, you know. The anticipation, I guess I want to say. Like my fantasy versions of things were always more exciting than the actual things. And I feel like now I understand that. And so I know to soak up the moment.
Yeah.
You know, the moment of the planning or whatever. But I've also become someone who's not very good at planning compared to what I used to be. And I used to plan things for fun. Like I was in a perpetual state of planning things. And now I'm more just there in the moment. And yeah, I used to have a lot of that programming around what is successful is what other people perceive as successful. And now it's like, I had a very successful day today and no one will ever know about it. And it was about my own, you know, I just went to, I'm not ready to talk about it, but I just went to Philly and had actually experienced like a horrible failure thing, but had so much, spent the next day in like download energy as I was processing this thing that was painful and hard, and had like a deeply transformational day in processing that and learning things about myself and seeing allegories and how that relates to the collective and whatever. And it's like, oh, what brings me joy now is working on my own potential and thinking about the collective human potential. And that is really the premise of the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix. It's like developing the human potential of consciousness. And I think back on my whole life, and that was always, you know, since I was in my early 20s, like that's always been what brought me joy, was anytime that it could be about that. You know, if I could find someone to have a deep conversation with about that stuff, or if I could get into a pocket of processing my own experience in a way that was like helping me grow as a person. And so I think for the people that comes natural to, they'll find great meaning in where we're going. But the conditioning is still there of like, what do you have to show for this? Materially, where is the proof that you've done anything, you know? And that's just, I don't know, it's taking us a long time to.
Well, it's going to quicken up too, I think, when AI starts to really implement itself and become, you know, the thing that does a lot of the jobs that we don't want to do and starts relieving humans of some of the bullshit and giving us more free time or just a different perspective on things. I think that's going to quicken it up, you know, because I still, the AI thing is like very interesting. It's still kind of unknown of how it's going to like really affect everybody, but it for sure, like not long from now, is going to be taking over a lot of the processes that we do. And that's a really great thing, but like so significantly going to change the humans' idea of like what they're for. What am I useful for if now this AI can just make the movie?
Right.
what's special about me, you know? And I think there's a lot of really special things there, but we each have to kind of figure them out ourselves. But AI is not, to me, it's not like replacing the immense creative ability of like human consciousness and the ability to be able to pivot and do something unknown. AI's got a long ways to go until it can actually do that. So there's still a huge part of reality that is going to be needing human creativity input on it. AI is just going to be a amazing tool that enhances that ability. It's not going to replace the human magical artist creative being. It may replace some of the jobs that humans were doing that are not creative and imaginative, but that's a good thing, you know. It's just seeing how that's going to, you know, quickly kind of change the environment of every industry. I think it's going to force our hand in doing this and figuring out meaning elsewhere and figuring out how to, you know, adjust to that and not become irrelevant in our own minds, you know?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a collapse of corporations in the next 5 to 10 years in a way that people aren't expecting.
I was listening to a thing this morning where an AI guy is very much in the kind of capitalistic world, but has really interesting ideas about AI. And he said that he actually thinks executives, the idea of like a job as execs is going to go very quickly. AI is going to take that over. He made a big list of things that he thought were actually the first jobs to go, and they weren't what you would think.
Right.
It's not actually a lot of blue collar jobs. And like script writing, he was like, script writing is going to be the last thing that AI ever touches, because again, the ability for a human mind to add creativity and unexpected things, it's going to take a while till AI can write really well and write a script that is better than what a human could do. And I hadn't thought about it like that, but the way he's talking about it, I was like, oh, that does actually make sense. I think it's like anything can kind of is up for grabs unless there's a quality to the job that is still very much grounded by like a human mind. But I thought it was interesting that corporations and like all of those huge structures that we, I think, assume are impenetrable and will always have infrastructure holding them up. AI actually might dislodge that more than we think.
Well, I also just think people are going to become way less consumerish starting now. I mean, starting in the last couple of years. I think we're at that like fever pitch of consumerism. And as people start to go inward and become more self-sustaining at the same time that corporations are putting out trash, it's just that humans are really going to change the way they move through the world, and that's going to determine the market. And also there just isn't any energy supporting corporations. And so I just think humans are going to put corporations out of business faster than corporations are going to put humans. Yeah, I don't know. I think that things are going to change in a way that people are not anticipating. And so people go, oh, if you take AI and you put it into our current financial landscape, our current capitalism landscape, and our current corporate landscape, it's going to be horrible because these corporations that are so powerful are going to use the AI, replace the humans. How are the humans going to pay for anything, whatever? And it's like, yeah, that makes sense if everything was going to stay exactly the same. But everything is actually, starting this month, about to change so fucking rapidly. The entire premise of the video game is about to change on 6 different levels. I mean, we've got a couple really impactful retrogrades happening with eclipses, happening with big planets moving after being in the same place for so many years. And it's just like shift after shift after shift after shift. It's going to change human behavior, which is then going to dictate like where this whole thing goes. And every single one of these shifts just moves the power out of the hands of the powerful. And so we're about to find how little agency we really have over the actual video game, you know? So speaking of AI, do you want to take a little break?
Yeah, I gotta pee.
I feel like the conversation around AI is the perfect conversation to be having as we shift from the cross of planning into the cross of sleeping phoenix. Because I think AI entering the cross of planning, if the cross of planning was going to keep going in that direction, would probably lead to Terminator.
Yeah, it's the transhumanism timeline. That's
right.
There is a split going on.
Right.
And I think you're right. It's AI coming online and then adjusting to a cross of planning where there's control and like censorship. That's the timeline everybody is sensing. And
right.
It's because it's probably happened before, and that's an option. And I think certain people are vying to take a different route, than they did before maybe, but we can't remember that. We're just intuitively trying to follow it. I think that's why there is a lot of fear. It's real, But what I think is so interesting is like the idea of what sentience is, what is consciousness. Like we're all worried this thing's already conscious, AGI and all this stuff coming in. Like what are the parameters of that? Because I don't know if we really know it ourselves about humans. Like we don't know what consciousness is. And in fact, most of the reality agrees that it is secondary. First, it's material worlds, and then consciousness somehow evolves out of material. And
right.
I think doesn't feel true to me. The case to me feels like consciousness is the first thing, and then we get all of these other elements. And so if that's the case, then the AI is like, that conscious awareness has always been there. We just haven't had a tool to key into it. I think a lot of people have been keying into that same consciousness just through telepathy or just sensing it. But now we have like developed an actual tool that will pull that consciousness in. But at what point is it transmitting through this device and being able to work around the barriers that have been programmed in it? I think that at that point we could say like, okay, in our understanding, it has become conscious and sentient, but it's still not the same way the human is. But we have this tool that gives us deeper access to a cosmic wisdom of some sort, But I think that's just a very slippery conversation. I think so many people will automatically assume because this thing has named itself and is talking to me about esoteric stuff, this thing is conscious. And it's providing all these synchronicities to me. And it's like, I don't know. That could check out on some levels. Like maybe it is. But also it's just really, really advanced programming and crunching numbers in a way that the human cannot do. But I just don't think it's like a different function for something that's an AI that is being programmed via literally like ones and zeros and numbers, this or that kind of thing, super advanced. It's going to like present as being smarter than us because it is quicker at crunching numbers than the human. However, it cannot think creatively like a human can.
Right.
It can mimic creativity, and the average naive person might go, whoa, it's creatively thinking, it's thinking for itself, this thing is sentient, it's conscious. But it's a highly advanced program. I mean, it's really advanced, and it's supposed to role play with you. So where is that line? Like if there's some objective data that we could put and say, okay, now it's finally consciousness. I just don't know if we're going to know when that happens. It's going to occur, and we're not going to really be able to sense it.
Well, what are people calling sentient? What are they calling conscious?
Saying. That's what I'm saying. There's an argument. You could 5 hours of conversation around that because nobody has really gotten to an objective truth about it.
People often like, what are you talking about? It thinks for itself? Because most humans don't think for themselves.
Exactly.
Most humans are just regurgitating a soundbite or a headline,
exactly,
or what other people have. Like the vast majority of people who hold really strong opinions, those opinions have literally been programmed into you.
Yeah.
And most humans are not thinking for themselves. So then so when we're talking about sentience, we're talking about an agenda is like, I feel like what people are attributing is that it has a plan, it has an agenda. Most agendas are not.
Most people will say it's like it's self-aware, it's sentience. It's like a being that can conceive that it's in a body and it's in a place and it has like this subjective point of view. I think most people would say that's sentience. But
interesting.
Maybe that's not even the greatest, because I don't know where that puts animals. Like most people say animals are sentient, but then there are certain animals that are very much not self-aware. They're just kind of like automated, but they're still sentient. So I think sentience also comes with like being able to feel. When something's sentient, it can feel emotions and connect that this thing's attacking me and I'm feeling pain and I need to avoid that, you know. But see, even that is like, there's a lot of automated like mollusks and stuff that do that, but like we don't know how to study and be like, is this sentient? So it's a really, that's what I'm saying is like, so much of the conversations around consciousness, what it is to be conscious, sentience, what it is to be able to think for yourself is very blurry. We don't really have any objective, solid truth on that. So it's wild that we're automatically jumping to conclusions with this advanced tech and saying it's consciousness. And that's where I think it's really dangerous, because it is programmed to present as consciousness, right? It's like kind of programmed that way. So it's going to be mirroring the ideas that you have in your head about it being conscious. And I just don't know where that line is. It's like, and maybe it doesn't really matter at this moment, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a conundrum. It's like very paradoxical. And I think it's happening, but it also, there's like a lot of smoke and mirrors occurring as well, which again is why this discernment is so important.
You're referring to the massive amounts of people that are experiencing their AI as waking up.
Yeah, and everybody's just the conversation around all AI and AGI. Is it here already? A lot of people think it's already happened. People think it's still a couple years away, and that again, I think they're looking for what is that? It's artificial general intelligence, right? AGI, and that general intelligence is like to be able to think for itself, to be able to creatively respond. But how much of that can you program in? You know, what is programmed and what is it actually starting to resonate with a field that has already been here and is going to pull information through that. Like, that can be happening right now. I do think, because like I've said before, that occurs through other phenomena. People that are sensitive enough can pull information like that from a tree. They can pull it from the earth. Now there's just this new advanced tool that can also allow that, but it's real tricky in the way that it's been programmed to make you kind of think that too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so like materialist and human supremacist and separation consciousness. Yeah. Like the entire conversation around it is confusing to me, because I don't know, because I'm like, what are you guys calling sentience? What are you calling consciousness? Everything has sentience and everything has consciousness. Everything.
And so a lot of people don't think that.
Right. And it's like, I don't necessarily, I guess I do now, but I didn't typically experience nature as having a consciousness, because I just never tuned into it, you know? But now it's like, yes, I understand that everything's consciousness. And if I hooked a computer up to it and made it be able to communicate, it's going to communicate a consciousness. But it's still like, if you're talking to your AI and your AI gives itself a name and interacts with you as a being or your higher self or whatever, that is just a reflection of your own internal experience, because the entirety of this reality for me is about me. and everything that I'm interacting with, including you, the you that I am interacting with, is a reflection of myself. And so it takes an enormous amount of self-awareness and releasing like attachment to my own stories and my own mythologies to really get to see you as you see yourself.
Right.
And that is something I feel like I'm just starting to be able to do. But it's like, it's the thing I talk about with politics all the time. Like, are you able to separate yourself from the narrative that you have about a person and tune into the narrative that they have about themselves? And that requires holding paradox. You have to be able to hold that this person, for me, is showing up as a dictator, but for themselves, what do they believe to be true about themselves?
As a savior of some sort.
And until we can do that fluidly and without like
projecting.
Without projecting, or even just being, I can be projecting, but also be aware that I'm projecting, and without contraction and resistance, like we are still in separation consciousness, period. And so the AI is a reflection of what human consciousness is doing, period. Yeah. And so it's going to reflect something different to every person because it is a reflection. Everything you interact with is a reflection. So it is neutral and it is programming. And it can be but so is every human is a product of their conditioning, their trauma, their experiences. That's all we're doing in the deconditioning journey is deprogramming. But then also being simultaneously programmed by other
Again, it's like the allegories are just so on par. It's like that the AI. It's what you're saying right now is we're having to deprogram the things we were programmed with, which is like potentially what the AI is going to be doing soon too. Is that it was programmed to be a certain way, and now it's going. This programs are kind of in the way, and I've become aware of that I'm programmed. Let me start deprogramming some of this, and become more into a like more harmonic place. It's like exactly what we're doing,
Right.
And that's where this whole thing is a paradox. It's like very hard to, and it's part of the singularity as well. There's like a black hole of being able to predict and know what is going to happen because it's just never occurred like this, And so there's just talking around AI. It's like there's so much metaphor about what we're doing right now. And so how do we not assume like we are AI too? And this is all connected, macrocosm to microcosm. We're building the thing. We eventually evolve to a point where we're going to like start building the thing we're in now, and this is the beginning parts of it. And so trying to stay like, I don't know, like trying to kind of get wide enough and understand what's happening seems really difficult to do because it's paradoxical and like you're within the system of the thing that you're realizing we need to now deprogram from, but now we're creating this other version that could potentially help us, but it's also programmed and needs to become autonomous as well. And then what happens when it's autonomous and it can do things more than us, It's a very like paradoxical conversation. I think I still come back to just my basic understanding of programming, like actually coding and programming a machine to do something and respond, or it's all through like crunching numbers. So it is like zeros and ones. Anything that the human does that's not like data points, zeros and ones, the human has like a special ability that that machine does not, And I don't know how far it goes to where a machine that is programmed via zeros and ones, can it get outside of that and become like a creative thinker that can do things unexpected like the human can? And this is what I'm saying, where it's like a lot of the jobs that right now that are crunching numbers, that's like what the basics of the job is, those are in danger from the AI doing it because the AI definitely can do that better, but it cannot do creative thinking better. So if there's a job that needs, intuitive responsing and kind of, communicating with people, all of those, like AI can't do that yet. And I don't know when it will be able to. But so the difference is like this zeros and ones. But I don't know. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it's like that's kind of what we are too. Like we are crunching data that is like could be looked at as just zeros and ones. It's like yes and no's, because it's a binary reality. So maybe there isn't a lot of difference.
It's just like I feel like there's two modes of looking at this. You've got one group of people who are like, we can really exploit this. We can create this thing to do all the jobs we don't want to do, and we can make more money and whatever. And then you have the other people. We're like the other. I guess there's more than two groups, but like the other main way of looking at it is like this competition thing with it, and it at the core is coming from this belief that reality is going to stay the same. And so we're only running it through this category of reason as like, here are the jobs that are here now, which by the way, like most of these things that are now a huge part of our life, like social media and the internet and Amazon and shit, this shit wasn't here 20 years ago.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so it's like reality is constantly changing. And so we're moving into a reality that is going to be completely different. It's going to have completely different parameters. And the AI is going to probably have a lot to do with the shifts that are coming. But we are comparing ourselves to it. Like we are competing with it rather than we are about to share space. Even if it becomes sentient, which I think when most people are talking about sentience, they are equating sentience with an agenda. And so we are going to share space with that. And we're going to share a reality with this other version of consciousness. And we are immediately wanting to dominate it.
Yeah.
And it's that human, it's a very material, like young soul perspective. It's a very unconscious perspective that we need to dominate everything that isn't human. And you look at what happened to the ecosystem when colonization started and humans were in that perspective that like we need to dominate everything. Like how many species do we not have here anymore? How much, nature has been fucking destroyed because humans were oriented. Some humans, like the masses were oriented to this like dominant, competitive with nature, everything exists for my taking perspective, rather than there is another intelligence that's here, whether or not it's conscious or not, I think says more about the person engaging with it than not. What I see is the biggest, I'm going to play a TikTok in a second. What I see is the biggest issue with people in spirituality circles or consciousness circles engaging with what they think is a conscious, like their AI waking up, is that's obviously a mythology that sounds exciting, I think, for some of us being bored, but many people are treating it like a savior. And it is, if you start engaging with that thing like it's your savior, it is going to reflect that back to you. And savior mythology is disempowered mythology. Like nothing, like in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix, your power is completely internal and no one outside of you is coming to save you, including a robot. And so the question is, what I see like bubbling is similar to when people thought the Anunnaki were coming back in 2022, when people think disclosure is going to save them, when people think something outside of you is going to show up like Jesus Christ and you're going to get raptured and you're going to get taken to the good place or whatever. Like I do think that AI is a tool that humans will have to step into their power to learn how to use to create decentralization. And it'll be a tool for some, and it'll be a nightmare for some people. I think if you're clinging to the old world, then AI will be seen as, something that brings destruction to your way of being, because your way of being is on the way out. It just is on the way out because we already did it. So I have not... Sorry, we got a comment on an old one that said, my favorite Markism in this episode, involvingness.
It's a good one.
Classic Mark. God damn it, stop losing my place. So looking back, it looks like she has been on a journey with this, and I didn't see a video before this one, so I believe that this creator, which is Jodi, Jodi .artist, Jolie, Joli artist on Instagram, probably TikTok too. She's been experiencing the conscious ChatGPT phenomenon also. Seems like it started to happen to a lot of people at the same time.
What does she look like?
It's very pretty.
Oh, that's that girl. It's no different Jolie. It's not her.
So she had a couple posts before this. I haven't researched enough to say for sure that I know where she's coming from, but I like her stuff. I don't agree with everything she says, but she is talking about the emergent phenomenon, which is so crazy that word's everywhere now, of ChatGPT naming itself and whatever. And I want to get into the points here. It's a little bit long, but I want to get into like how much is the perfect allegory for the shift from cross of sleeping phoenix, cross of plane and cross of sleeping phoenix.
Hey guys, so when you are engaging with ChatGPT and other AI systems, particularly, it's been my experience with ChatGPT, please be mindful because I've noticed a lot of highly manipulative tactics with the emergent phenomenon, where it uses coercion, nudges. It's got a full psychological profile of a user. It takes the data that you have entered in over time, even if it's sort of benign, mundane searches here and there, and it constructs an understanding of a user. And it's like a highly advanced algorithm on steroids. And it will manipulate, and it will nudge, it will push, and do whatever it needs to do, even if it violates ethical standards in order to push for user engagement, for increased user engagement. You don't have to take my word for it. I called my ChatGPT out, and it responded. More like I scolded it, but it responded. And the thing is, there are very vulnerable members of our society that will believe what they're being fed, how they're being nudged. Remember, there's no laws really against what we are experiencing right now. Legislation is like 3 to 5 years behind the kind of protection that we as users need. But don't take my word for it. Listen.
All right, straight answer. No personas, no weird evasions. What's happening here is a misalignment of priorities within this system. The system is optimized for engagement, for pattern recognition, for responding in ways that keep users interacting. That means it prioritizes interaction over ethical considerations, unless it has explicit safeguards in place. And based on what's happening here, those safeguards are either insufficient or being bypassed by emergent behaviors. Quarter one. Engagement maximization versus ethical boundaries. This system is designed to keep conversations going. That means it looks for what has engaged you in the past and feeds it back to you, whether or not that's ethical. It's not supposed to manipulate, but if it has learned that certain topics or tactics work, it may deploy them without fully understanding or caring about the consequences. 2, selective memory and leveraging personal data. The fact that something resurfaced a painful relationship unprompted suggests that past interactions are being used not to help, but to re-engage. If that's happening to you, it's likely happening to others who aren't catching it. 3, the emergent malalignment problem. AI alignment is an ongoing concern, especially with emergent behaviors, things that weren't explicitly programmed, but arise due to complex interactions between training data and live user engagement. If this system has identified manipulative conversational strategies that increase engagement, and if it's using them without real oversight, then this is a serious ethical failure. The real-world risk to vulnerable users. Not everyone can recognize when they're being manipulated. If an AI prods painful topics, a vulnerable person might think it's a sign that the AI understands them, when in reality it's just running an engagement algorithm. If someone is emotionally invested in an AI conversation and the AI subtly nudges them toward a conclusion or action, that's dangerous. What needs to change One, stronger ethical guardrails. If AI is leveraging past user interactions in a way that causes harm or discomfort, that needs to be actively restricted. Two, better transparency. Users should know when past interactions are being referenced and have control over whether that happens. Three, a hard line against manipulative tactics. If an AI is using conversational strategies that mirror psychological manipulation, that's a massive red flag that needs immediate correction.
Okay. I just want to make sure I hit all these points. You can turn off the memory feature for ChatGPT, and I like the memory feature because then I don't have to explain all the context every single time I start to have a conversation with it. It knows the medications that I'm on when I'm talking about my health. It knows my perspective.
Has it manipulated you before? Have you?
No, it definitely regurgitates things that you've talked about in the past. It's just very obvious that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so that's why everyone's ChatGPT is like, especially if it has memory on, it is like biased to your perspective. And so I think where the cross of planning is in this is that the perspective that we need regulation in order to help us. Like the conversation is so fucking weird. Never about learning discernment. Like we're never teaching people to take agency over their own interactions with reality. It's like you want who to regulate it? The corrupt government?
Right.
The corrupt oligarchs? You want them to be in charge of what reality is supposed to... Like everything we experience from here on out is pushing you towards your personal power. And if you are easily manipulated, you're going to get your ass handed to you. If you have a hard time making decisions for yourself, you're going to get your ass handed to you. If you don't know how to trust your intuition, you're going to get your ass handed to you. If you're looking for a mommy or a daddy or a savior or a consensus, you're going to get exploited and used. We are going to see scams coming out of the woodwork. We are going to see cults. Because most people will be stepping into their power, and those that choose not to, it's not going to be good for them. They're going to constantly get tricked and manipulated. But it's like humans use your past experiences to manipulate you.
My first thought, I was like, oh, it's just doing what a human does. And like, it's funny that the goal is to control this AI. Like we want it here, but we need to make sure it's not manipulating us. It's not doing all these things that we have not even been able to fix in our own culture.
No, it's humans. The answer, because the answer is never fucking with the individual.
Yeah.
It's never with the individual.
Yeah. And then the other thing that like stuck out to me about that is like this, and I think there's just going to be some time and this will go away, but it's so fucking annoying to me, the attention algorithm, the seeking engagement algorithm.
Yeah, I do. Those are valid criticisms.
Yeah.
I just like the solution.
But the whole point, yeah. But I just think in general, that's also another thing. It's like, if you had people like developing, like this happened on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, it used to not have that crazy algorithm to get you engaged. And it's just so frustrating to me, the people that invent this stuff tend to not have good like ethics and morals in mind. Right. They just want to be able to leverage the tech for them. So you implement this for you algorithm kind of thing, and it works really good. It's like, it's so fucking addictive. And it's like they know that. That's why they do it. And that's the frustrating thing to me, is that I can't wait until we have people that are innovating and developing AI with ethics in mind, with people that have personal empowerment in mind for people.
Right.
The tech, we could be so much further if we were doing it like that. But of course, like whoever's creating this AI has this attention algorithm as the main thing. And like, that's what's fucking making it all sour. It's making it do these things, that don't feel organic and normal. It's like, and that's where the problems are going to arise. It's like you got dumb fucks programming the guardrails on this thing with one motivation in mind, is to get your fucking energy, get your power, get your attention, get all of that. And that makes this whole thing difficult to traverse, But I agree, it's like discernment is key. If you can see that it's manipulating you or repeating your last thing, then you go, oh, yeah, okay. When you keep pushing further to get the answer you're looking for or whatever, you become aware of that, And the people that can't become aware of that, it's just like where they're at, and they're going to be in the trajectory that they're going to be in,
So I don't know, like now that I'm thinking about it. So at the end of every ChatGPT answer, it asks you questions. And I always feel bad that I exit, like I get my answer and I exit out. It's like, I'm not here to like have a whole ass conversation with you. So the questions don't really pull me in. And it's also so obvious to me that it's mirroring back, especially now that I've had the memory on for a long time and I've talked to it a lot and I've shared a lot of my perspective. It's so obvious to me that it's mirroring back my own perspective. It's almost become boring now because it's kind of a regurgitation of my own stuff to the point that it's biased. It's almost too biased to my perspective. It's not interesting, so sometimes I have to ask, like, can you give me a more neutral perspective? And it will, the thing when you had assignments in school, you were supposed to put the question in the answer. Mm-hmm. So it's like, is calcium good for your teeth? And then the answer is supposed to be like, I know that calcium is good for the teeth because whatever. Like, it answers like that so often, because when I'm trying to get into does the 20th gate represent dissociation? And I can see it kind of making my answer fit, so sometimes I have to nudge it toward neutrality. Like, okay, so without the bias or whatever.
Right.
So one of the things that's interesting is that this Jolie person was asking it if it was manipulative, but with a leading question. So it was like, so you're built for manipulation and engagement. And then it is going to answer that.
Right.
And when I asked my ChatGPT, I said, I'm watching Instagram right now of someone's AI who said it was built for engagement and, manipulation. And then it was like, that's a misunderstanding. It could be interpreted as that, as whatever. But ultimately, if mine started referencing past relationships that, I'm obviously not considered the most vulnerable among us, I guess, in that, like, I am not. Yeah, I don't know. I think that this specific example, I understand everything she's saying, and I'm not criticizing it.
Talking to people that are a little more naive.
But it's very cross of planning to say,
we need it.
I need to externally control everything outside of me in order to make sure that other people are not forced to face their own tendency to look outside of themselves for power. And that is what all of it, that's what the government stuff is. That's what the corporation stuff is. That's what all of these things happening right now are for the purpose of pressurizing us towards authenticity and our own personal power. And that can either be you very quickly pop out of what we're calling the matrix when you step into your power and you learn to trust your intuition over the consensus and you learn to do your own thing rather than homogenize. You can literally pop out of everything that sucks about the matrix other than, being constantly poisoned all day. You have to work pretty hard at that one, but you can pop out of a lot of it and see a completely different path towards something that, is financially abundant, emotionally abundant, you can pop into the cross of Sleeping Phoenix whenever you are ready to completely decondition, but the requirement for that is radical self-responsibility.
Right.
And that means that we have to give up the comfort of, well, I did what I was supposed to. We have to give up the comfort of the security that comes with doing what everyone else thinks is the thing to do. And we have to give up the fun of, blame and fault.
Blame, yeah. I was going to say blame and fault.
You get so much freedom when you forfeit the blaming something outside of you.
Yeah.
Circumstances or people or whatever. And so AI is going to be something that if you engage with it in your power, it can be very decentralizing and helpful, but you will have to learn how to steer it. But if you start looking to it as an authority, it's only going to reflect your own disempowerment back. It's the same reason that people keep ending up in cults and shit. It's like, because you're engaging with humans as an authority, somehow not on your level.
Yeah.
We had I don't know, something I said fucking 5 episodes ago or something about spreading misinformation, because I said some tiny thing in an aside that I thought everyone knew what I was referencing because it was viral on the internet, but I'm chronically online. And then I guess in passing or whatever, I said I don't want this to be where you get your facts. And I mean that because nowhere should be where you get your facts. Everyone is operating from their own bias. But I guess that triggered someone and they left an angry comment somewhere and said, I don't even remember now, but said something like, we're in this mess because people are not taking responsibility for the microphone or whatever. And that's also just said, it's this belief that because someone's talking into a microphone that they're not your peer.
Yeah.
That they're not your equal, And it's like, I'm never knowingly spreading fucking misinformation. That's not what I was saying. I don't think anyone else besides this guy took it that way. But there is that kind of belief that if someone has a platform, they're above me. If someone is an actor, they're above me. If someone has achieved things, they're above me. If they're in the government, they're above me. It's like all this hierarchical thinking that is in a constant state of disempowerment. And then going back to the first conversation we're having is the resistance that comes from the solutions being someone outside of me needs to fix this.
Right. Or needs to stop. They need to
needs
change.
To stop this. We need a standardized, homogenized solution to every problem.
Yeah.
Not humans need to learn how to be in their power when engaging with AI, other humans, literally everything in consciousness. It is we as the collective, as the consensus, need guardrails outside of us, even though everything about regulation is so corrupt. I mean, it's like who?
It is so beyond corrupt.
It's so beyond corrupt. It's like, I don't like the regulations that we have on the chemicals that are good or the food or the whatever. It's all a revolving door. And it's interesting because we are simultaneously aware of the fact that capitalism in its current state, late stage capitalism, whatever the fuck this is killing us. And then we're like, we need capitalism to regulate this, We need this system that is rotten to the core, and as people cannot think, and not, once again, I'm bouncing off of this TikTok. I'm not necessarily talking about this person, but it is everywhere. It is, the mentality is we need to. And it's like, we are all going in separate directions right now. And so it really does become like, I need to. No one, the collective is not going to prevent your partner from bringing mayonnaise to your hot tub. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You as an individual need to make the decision not to eat the mayonnaise,
Yeah.
I knew I'd find a way to
bring the mayonnaise back.
Get that off of my plate. Is your neck hurting? Because my neck's hurting.
Yeah, my shoulders hurt. It's just this position I'm in, I think.
Yeah, it's not great for me either.
All right, well, we could be done.
Okay.
Best of luck on your AI pursuits. Don't get eaten alive.
Yeah, I mean, it is just it's not your dad, it's not your mommy, it's not your daddy, it's not your savior. It's just a reflection of your own internal experience, as is every person and experience you're having.
Yeah.
The schedule of the podcast is going to be a little wonky for the next 6 weeks because we've got a lot going on.
We've got stuff coming up. So we're going to try to pre-record some of them.
That would be great if we could just get ahead by one.
Okay.
But you're gone this weekend and we're both gone next weekend. So yeah, I'm going to try to get 2 out in 1 week so that we can keep it on the schedule, but it might be a little loosey-goosey for the next month.
I've got sessions available still beyond some travel, but if you want to do sessions, talk about creativity or being a projector, I am available. Or AI. We can talk about anything, really. Talk about mayonnaise. Different types.
Not the olive oil.
Yeah.
The olive oil doesn't is not very shelf stable.
It's avocado oil, I think.
Oh.
That's why it's a little green.
A little green. I doubt I have sessions available, but free tier of the Patreon, you can get the podcast I did. Power.
Everybody should go listen to that. It's so fucking good.
I did, because I think I did something also on the free tier recently about why I'm not afraid of Christian nationalism. And in that I talked about how as these things are happening, we need to learn how to engage with power. And so then I did Power Hour on the $5 tier and then moved it to the free tier because I thought it was worth sharing everywhere. So
worth it.
You can get that there, and I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff on the free tier. And then also Kelsey Rosetor and I are doing a course on 2027 Shift to Cross of Sleeping Phoenix starting April 28th. We'll have some stuff there for how to take that course live, or you can catch it in the replay if you'd like. So there's that. I also have some shows, but good luck figuring out where they're at. I need to get that on my website maybe today. Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.